I mean, it kind of doesn't matter a ton as long as this survives enough so that we can threaten to block with it next turn and have enough to kill them. Wow, alright, so that's a thing. That's a lot of champions there. I mean, otherwise I like the hand here. So, format's changing a little bit. For today's video, we are going to be debuting kind of the new format, which is where I put the gameplay up first, and then for those of you who actually care about what's in the deck, we talk about that at the end. But for today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Wounded Warrior, basically a Braum Vladimir style deck. Vladimir got a small buff this patch, and I kind of wanted to take a shot at trying him out, so we're going to see whether or not we can actually make this work. But it's been a long time since I've queued into something like this. Usually this is an indicator that somebody's just playing with every champion they own. And it's been a long time since I've seen that. So I don't know what to expect here at the moment, but nonetheless, we're going to go ahead and play a Braum to go with our little hawk here. Could have went with something slightly more aggressive, something like the Curator last turn, but I kind of wanted to get Braum out because I didn't know if they were baiting me and this was just the better defensive option. I'm now starting to wonder, like, did I get paired against a bot? They haven't even played anything. Like, it's one thing to do this, but also now they haven't played anything and they're filling up on cards. Like, I just legitimately, at this point in time, wonder if I'm playing against a bot. Okay, I guess not. There's a deep meditation. Alright, sure. Let's see if we can start the value train. Sure. Because I don't know what's going on. Like, this makes me wonder, like, am I running into... just somebody I mean, they emoted. I was gonna say, is this just somebody farming...
I seal this by sword.
XP? Like, I don't see that on the ladder very often. I'm legitimately speechless. And I don't know what to think, so hopefully this will... Okay, sure, there's the will. Fine. That's why I split up the take hearts there, just for the record.
I have the name. I need the reputation.
Now, I could have put one here to keep this alive. This will kill itself this turn, so a little bit of a bummer there, but... Got another take heart. I mean, all things in our hand are looking fine. No? Alright, they're playing cards. Guess we'll play our Vlad. It's kind of the whole point of testing the deck out, right?
Hello, my darlings.
It's a beautiful Vlad here. I mean, we just skip this every time, right? There's zero reason for me to walk into any sort of combat tricks that are going to kill my Vlad or my Braum, and they didn't even do that first. How... Like, when I said no blocks, like, that should have been a thing. But, okay. I mean, this is game winning here, so unless they have like a deny for this and then a bunch of healing, we just win, yeah. So I'm a little confused about what I just played against. We're gonna play another game and see how it goes. Now this is gonna be also interesting. So with the patch, Vi got a bit of an adjustment. Yeah, this seems fine. And I am used to seeing Vi being splashed in Demacia, but I'm not used to seeing it just solo Vi. I assume this is likely still Bannerman Demacia, but only one way to find out.
Oh, I can't wait.
I think we take the open attack here before committing to anything.
Smell that? A fight to cook.
And then we'll play the Curator.
Hello, dear. What have you got us into now?
Pair of Take Hearts is actually pretty good for us going forward because we can get a lot of use out of that with our Crimson units. Hawk is a great stall card here for us against the newly nerfed Grizzled Ranger. Though to be fair, we also had the Death Lotus as well. Now what's interesting here is I could block and Death Lotus, and then that way I have the block going through, but I also get a trigger. It's just a question on if I'm playing Death Lotus, do I also want to play this round? Because I'd prefer to Death Lotus this. But I think getting the value here makes more sense so that I can play this after the fact. So you do this. Now the reason you block and Lotus is just because even though this is going to kill this here, if they have a combat trick or something, then you also still have the block going off as well. But also, this needs to be blocking for this to trigger on it. It's only battling units. So there's a couple of reasons why you're doing it in this particular order.
Let me show you what I can do.
And we'll just go ahead and sacrifice a Hawk here. Now the downside is we didn't get any value out of our Curator, so we're a bit down on cards. But the good news is we get to drop a Tarkaz now, which is kind of nice. Now the bad news is they answer with a Vi. But with only 1 mana available, so if I swing with everything, like let's be honest here, I'm going to lose both of these to value trades. Or at least one, well actually, you know what, we're fine. I was gonna say, it's gonna lose both of them to value trades, but if they block with these, this is gonna have the damage come in. So this is actually a trade here. But we also get the triggers, which is the real reason why you want to swing with these.
Oh, this hurts.
And now with the damage here, it's a great Take Heart bait. Outside of Detain, there's not a lot that Demacia can do against a single, like, tall or massive unit. I wonder if they're... So, like, the barrier is kind of annoying. Because they're going to try to eat my guy, and then I'm going to have to decide to keep it alive with the Take Heart or not.
Alright, let's
Ooh.
mess some folks up.
Yeah, that's not very fun. So, the one downside to a deck like this is obviously, like, the triple Take Heart. So we're going to be taking 9 here. We'd much prefer to have units here.
Oh, I can't wait.
Transfusion's kind of nice.
They brave or stupid?
So we're gonna do this. This will also get them down to 3, so we can effectively get them down to 1 here, barring some sort of crazy combat tricks. Now, if they're gonna put that Vi up, that tells me they might have some kind of block in mind, though. Or combat trick. To keep her alive. Or they just have another. Or just better units on the counter attack. I mean, it kind of doesn't matter a ton as long as this survives enough so that we can threaten to block with it next turn and have enough to kill them. Which is ultimately what you're kind of going for here. So here's whatever their combat trick is. Might be like a riposte. Single combat's obviously very painful. Alright, and they had the Vault Breaker, so that was the Vi they were looking to play. It's a bit of a shame. Largely because we wanted to get them within striking distance. So our one plan, I'm going to lose this, but we're still going to end up with a really nice teachable moment here, largely because I think that our course was correct. Without knowing what they have in hand, yeah. Like, even more so with us topping this, right? So, like, if they don't have the all-in way to kill that Disciple that round, so in other words, if they don't have the single combat, we had a victory, right? So I think this is going to be a good showcase for what you're trying to do with the deck. We did get the one weird win that I'm still puzzled by. And then we're gonna get the loss here. So
Routes closed.
oh, and they had the pursuit. Fair enough. It's funny because, like, again, pursuit doesn't matter. Pursuit is just win more in this scenario. Everything came down to whether or not they had the single combat. So anyway, if you made it this far, hopefully you'll stick around for, like, me going through the deck list choices and so forth. But I've wanted to shake things up and put the gameplay up front for a while and see how folks preferred that as opposed to me talking about the deck and then playing it. So I think doing it this way gives you access to seeing the gameplay, and then if you care about that sort of thing, me talking about the deck. So we're gonna go talk about the deck now. All right, so for this deck, I really just wanted to kind of play around with Vladimir because I felt like it might be worth kind of checking out a bit now that he received a minor buff. The reality is I still don't think he's ultimately going to be that strong, but I did go a bit overboard. So, like, let's be clear. I know right out of the gate that this is not going to be a competitive list. I wanted to just revisit some themes to see kind of what their overall power level is. And that second game there is probably not the best example, I think, of what this deck is capable of, just because it was a bit of a bad hand. You never want to end up with 3 take hearts in hand, but I think running the 3 is also necessary for what you're trying to do. But let's just start with the basics. Omen Hawk. The deck buffing here is important because specifically you want your Braum to at least get to 1 attack so we can start trading with some things. That's why this one matters a bit more than other options. If I could pick a card that's not in this list, for example, that I would love to fit in this list, it would be something like Shared Spoils. Now we've got Crimson Disciple and Demolitionist, just because both of these give you a lot of value with cards like Take Heart, with cards like Braum, etc., etc. I am running Death Lotus. It's both a defensive card, but also a way to self-trigger if you don't want to run the 3, or if aggro falls off the face of the earth. I know that Burn received a couple of nerfs recently, but I don't think the deck is necessarily dead. But let's just say it does for the most part, disappear. You could cut down on these and maybe add some shared spoils or other options, but for right now, it's a multi-purpose tool, so I like it in the list. Ruthless Raider. So this card is interesting because, one, it's a nice 2-drop. You can block fearsome units with it. But tough here, this tough keyword, the toughness that this has, I'm going to say tough a few more times. This counts as damage for the purposes of leveling Vladimir. Like, the unit is getting damage and then the damage gets reduced, so it survives it. So if you're wondering, for example, Vladimir and his, you've had 6+ allies survive damage. If you have Ruthless Raider on the board and you use something like Death Lotus and it hits this and then that damage gets negated, you'll still get progress towards leveling Vladimir. So in a Vladimir deck, this card actually ends up being pretty great because you get free triggers towards leveling him anytime you block something with 1 attack. All of these 1 damage cards like Death Lotus, like Transfusion, or Vladimir himself when he starts attacking, they all trigger Vladimir off of this tough. So it's better than advertised in a Vladimir deck. Transfusion, again, wanted it for the triggers, for the combat trick. 3 of them, it might be a bit much, though. Again, if you wanted to maybe shuffle in some shared spoils, maybe this is another spot that you could remove it. Braum was in here because I knew I wanted to run Ruthless Raider and some of those test units, and so when I was thinking about stuff you could pair with Vlad, Braum is like the obvious choice. That being said, I think Braum's inclusion in the stuff to make Braum work might also be part of the reason this just isn't very competitive. Better builds might put like Sejuani in, for example, and go down that path. I might even try that for a later video, but for this one, Braum was in the list because I wanted to meme a bit. I'm going to be honest. Crimson Curator. Meming is also why I'm just nowhere on the ladder. I can't stop playing stuff that's fun. And then anytime I sit down and like I want to grind competitive decks, I don't know. I've hit a point lately where most of the competitive builds are not new builds. They're stuff that was competitive pre-Rising Tides, and they're just still competitive post-Rising Tides. And I've had my fill of playing them. So while last season I muddied around in Master for a long time, this season I have not done much grinding at all to hit Master because the memes are just too strong. Crimson Curator, this is your essential value generator. You don't have a lot of card draw in this list, and you could take stuff out to put card draw in, but then at that point, like you're building a different deck, in my opinion. So really, just using this to keep generating a bunch of additional units is kind of nice. 2 Ember Maidens. This is just a nice source of consistent damage. It really helps with your Vladimir. It really helps with Braum. It helps with a number of things. 1 Guillotine because of all the 1 damage pings you have. The 3 Take Hearts. 2 Fury of the North kind of helps in the same regard that Take Heart does, but not quite the same way. This is another card you could cut for something like Shared Spoils if you wanted to fit it in. Tarkaz is just a great 5-drop in this list. You want his ability to be triggering things, and he's also just a great stat line. Like, playing a 5/8 on 5 is beautiful. So besides Sejuani, if you want to go another path with this deck, another card that this one really synergizes well with is actually Swain. So if you don't want to go the Braum path and you also maybe want to cut some of these Take Hearts or things of that nature, or maybe cut the Furies and going with more direct damage, you could run Swain in a list like this as well. And maybe we'll do a Vladimir Swain list at some point because Vladimir's ability also helps level up Swain. So there's that. But this, I think, is a bit underplayed. Largely, I think, because just Freljord is underplayed right now. But a 5/8 for 5 is great. And the drawback on this is very often not a drawback at all in the right deck that you want to play this in. So I'm a big fan of Tarkaz. Vladimir's here because he's Vladimir. And then I had 1 Armored Tusk Rider because this card is actually kind of funny once you throw a Take Heart on it. Or something of similar nature, similar thought process behind Scar Mother as well. Scar Mother is great with Take Heart decks, etc., etc. These would be additional cards I would likely cut if I was going to be making a Swain version. And as I said, we might do a Swain version of this list in the future. But this was the one that I ran for today. If you want to use it as like a blueprint and then fine tune it, then by all means do so. I do not claim that this is very fine tuned. This was just me experimenting kind of on patch day about the power level of Vlad. I will say in the few games I've played today, not just the ones that I'm throwing up for recording, but the few games I've played today, Vladimir has felt okay. He's pretty easy to level up now. So a lot of times you are paying 5 for the 6/6 regen, which by itself is, I think, nice. And then his ability and the way that it triggers now is also pretty solid. I think that, as I was saying before, I think that non-Braum versions of the list could actually end up being viable now that I've kind of played around with it a bit. Even if you want to stay with Freljord and just not go with Braum, I think that Sejuani or Swain are probably better, but this is fun. I had a lot of fun. I had a game earlier. Sadly, I wasn't recording, but I had a game earlier where I leveled Braum, and I had, between Vladimir and Ember Maiden, a ton of Poros flooding, because Ember Maiden just gives you free Poros every turn if you can keep her alive. So anyway, if you made it this far, I appreciate you. Thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll catch you watching future videos. And honestly, just feels really good to sit down and start filming again. I know that today's video is a little bit of a fluff because it's a non-serious deck, but I don't know, I've just had the meme bug lately, so I promise I'll do more competitive stuff soon, especially post-patch. I know folks are going to be looking for good decks post-patch, but I don't know, ever since Rising Tides, man, I know I said it a little bit earlier in the video as well, I just feel more inclined to play the fun, a little bit less serious decks, because I feel like a lot of the competitive lists are the same decks that we had prior to Rising Tides, with the exception of like maybe the Klepto decks that are running around. Most of the lists are just new or updated versions of stuff that we had, and I've just had the itch to explore. So soon, I promise, soon we're gonna share some competitive lists. But yeah, thanks if you made it this far.